seasons of distress, we've got an anchor in the Lord. And we come to let you know that you can make it.
Let's give it a minute, give somebody some time to join us.
All over the land, people are hopeless, doing the best they can. But we've got an anchor, His promises are true. Just keep on believing, God will see us through. Come on, say we can make it. Come on, don't you give in, we can make it. You might be troubled on every side, but God's got you. Come on, tell somebody next you, say we can make it. Ooh. Yes, we're burning on every side.
Right. Got some people joining us. Just give it a couple of seconds. Get it out there, share it. If you're on and you want to share it, now's the time.
I said I'll be right there.
Playing this song, We Can Make It, from my good friend TAMBA GILES. If y'all have not checked it out, go on and download it. Anywhere you download your music, We Can Make It. Hi, Veda. All right. So it looks like at least we're streaming in the right place. So let's see how we can do it. I see some comments coming in. Sean, did you screen it from my page? Share it from my page. All right, all right, all right. Surely we can make it.
I don't see it on your.
You say you don't see it?
Mm-mm.
Let me see. I see Sharonda Ford is live now. Nevada, are you on my page? I think it is down some.
Oh, I found us, sis.
All right.
All right. Sorry about that. I had to switch chairs.
And I probably should have switched chairs. But here we are. So I did it. And this is what we're working with for now. All right. So, all right. I think we got it. Do we have it? Let's see. Okay, Nevada, is it my page or the ministry page or the counseling page? It's my page. And I think, what is this, like week 5? And trying to figure out and navigate how to get it going. So I think one of the things is trying to be able to see the comments, but we're going to work on that.
Well, we don't have a production team.
Yes, I think we need one. I cannot. All right, so no one's in the back waiting. So, sister, how are you?
I have survived the first week of distance learning. We're calling it, we don't call it our remote teaching, it's distant learning.
Okay.
We survived the first week with lots of struggles. So for anyone listening tonight and you want to share either the struggles as a parent or the struggles of your student, what was there for you this week? For us, it was Google Meet's failure. Lots of students couldn't get connected to the classrooms.
Wow. Is that, and what district are you in?
Baltimore County Public School, but it was a communication issue between the networks and the servers. We have about 120,000 students all using the same network, and just a lot of traffic, as well as globally, a lot of school districts are using that global platform. So we did survive. By today, I started getting messages from students thanking me because, due to the troubleshooting and tons of emails going between our IT department on the district level. We were able to get most of our students connected. So it feels good though.
All right. So I know for me, I got to talk to some parents who were navigating that environment, and just how overwhelmed. I think it was the expectation for some it was like grief. They were anticipating things to be hard already. And so it turned out to be probably less overwhelming than what they expected based on what they experienced early in the year. And people were able to kind of work through it a little bit better. So that it's good to know. So what would you say your takeaway was from week 1?
Just trying to get the message out to the parents and students that this is different than in the spring. In the spring, we did emergency instruction. Schools were shut down abruptly. We had 2 weeks, which we thought was an early spring break, and we really thought we would be back, And so the 2 weeks ended, and then the conversation switched to how do we provide the students with instruction? So it was emergency instruction. We were just kind of grabbing stuff and just kind of hoping some things kind of stuck. Students didn't necessarily have to have a virtual class every day. As long as they did the work and turned it in, we went to a pass-fail system. We went to a pass-fail system. We combined the third and fourth quarter, and it really was, it was triage, right? So we've had all summer. Teachers have been working diligently, training on universal design, how to engage students in this distant learning, trying to make sure our software was up to date, making sure students had devices. As a district, I'm really fortunate because our students already were familiar with having digital platform and digital lessons, but we had to distribute probably another 30,000 computers. And so the takeaway for me this week is our district was prepared for this, even though we didn't know what we were being prepared for. That's the old saying of stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
For sure. For sure.
Patience and grace. Grace is my word of the month. Joy is my word of the year, but grace to ourselves, grace for our students, grace to the district level administrators. No one at any level, including the President of the United States, has ever had to experience this. So there's no training to this as an educator, as a parent, as a counselor, as a coach. So grace is what my takeaway is.
Okay. And I saw a tweet earlier this week. I think it speaks to what you're talking about. Tell me about that. Well, let me clear it up. Because there's millions of tweets every week, but I just happened to be using my Twitter thumb, and I saw an at LaShawn, and I was like, yes. So tell me what that was about.
You always put me on the spot.
I'm really putting you on the spot. Watch.
And so it's one of the lessons that I took away from Nana Addie was to accept praise and to say thank you when it's given. We often, as women, or I'll speak personally, I often try to deflect it and say, oh, it was no big deal, or it was a team, or there were other people. So accepting our kudos. I partnered or collaborated with the social studies department at my school. We put a large group of students together. And one of my jobs as a virtual media specialist is to link up or collaborate with teachers and still provide them research tools. So pushed myself out of my comfort zone level, and I created a screencast, which normally I would have done a live demonstration. So it was really fun. And one of the things that I truly love is working with students and teachers. So my social studies department did give me a shout out back to them for giving me the opportunity to collaborate with them. So yeah, we had about 60 students in one large Google Meet, and the lesson went really well. And the students, so another takeaway, our students do want to learn. Our students do want to thrive, even in this environment. That would be another takeaway, is our students do want to learn.
So what has changed for you? I know I digress, but it's what I do. What has changed for you? Because as I've had a front seat to what you've been doing since March, it seems like your entire role has evolved and you have really been blessed, I guess, to be thrown into this opportunity to learn and grow for yourself, but and your students in your community.
Yes, that is true. What has changed for me in a remote setting, typically as a librarian, I have my physical space, I have books. And so it's really clear what the role of a librarian is. But the other part of my training is media specialist. And so it pulls in print, digital, video, any type of media. And so I've really had an opportunity to kind of enhance and stretch myself with those skills. But anytime we tap into our new skills, that imposter syndrome can show up, which is where we start to doubt in our own insecurities and wonder, am I good enough? Do I have what it takes to deliver in this new platform? And so you have to really kind of learn to use some self-talk, some coping mechanisms, and be willing to be unsuccessful or kind of uncomfortable to get comfortable with discomfort is what I like to say. So I really have had an opportunity to kind of build on that and stretch myself in a lot of different ways. So thank you for asking that question.
So you mentioned imposter syndrome, and it just takes me right to where we are tonight, what we're talking about. And mainly because I think that we'll find, or we see that as we start talking about suicide prevention and awareness, a lot of it may be based even on imposter syndrome, right? Or just internal talk, or those self-doubts, those negative thoughts, those negative cognitions, like all of those things. And so I like the way you said you kind of had to put that to the side. What about people who don't put it to the side, right? Tell me how. Let's lead into the suicide awareness and kind of how you feel about that.
Self-doubt and fear, insecurities, it will leave you paralyzed. It'll leave you isolated and lonely. The negative voice is what can lead you to think that your life does not matter. Lost all hope, and you feel as though you don't have any other choices, or you don't have a purpose to live. I would imagine that in that dark, deep place, it would lead to a suicide attempt, or even a suicide death.
So let's talk about that, because as we were planning today, and just looking at the statistic that every 40 seconds one person dies of suicide. So that is less than a minute. One person is dying. That is 60 people in an hour, minimally 60 people in an hour.
So you're saying we've been on this live 13 minutes now. So 13 lives.
13 lives.
And deaths, suicide deaths, 1 in 40 seconds.
1 in 40 seconds.
Just leaving space for that to sink in. Yeah.
I think for me, as you know, this is very important to me, right? This topic is really, really important to me. But as I reflect on the people that I've lost to suicide, people that I know that have attempted suicide, people that I know that have suicide ideation, people that I know that have been close, for me, it's heartbreaking. And looking at those statistics is heartbreaking, right? It's so difficult to absorb that this has happened, and that this is something that we really are faced with throughout. at every moment of the day. And so my heart breaks for the families of people who deal with it, right? We can name it what we want. We can say, put any of those labels and stigmas to it, but it absolutely is a mental health crisis. I don't think there's any way to make light of it. For me, I know I even thought about, reflected on our cousin who was killed, but it was a murder suicide. And so I even thought about, and I remember thinking about it then, that when she was killed, he killed himself and his family still had to deal with that. And their child, grew up, is growing up knowing that the father killed the mother and then killed himself. So for me, being face to face with so many stories of suicide and growing up with suicide ideation and attempts, it's just heartbreaking for me and devastating, especially looking at that statistic.
And I would imagine in your profession as a psychotherapist, when a client shares that type of burden with you, how do you deal with that compassion fatigue? I know you've been doing some research, a secret, a special project you're working on, but how do you combat that?
Um, I, I have to say my faith, right? So we can talk self-care all the time, but what I can say is that my faith is what sustains me. Um, I'm grateful. I say it all the time, right? I would have a semicolon right here if I believed in tattoos. But I rely on Christ, right? Because to me, I hear the screams of the silent, even when they are not speaking. So it doesn't matter it doesn't matter what they are not saying. I can feel the screams of the silent. And so for me, it's heartbreaking. I sit there, I can sit with them in that space. I think that's what is important too, holding that space and just allowing them to express that. I don't take any of those threats or reports lightly. I often think about myself, and I know that sometimes I said it for attention. Lord, please forgive me, because I knew, I don't know, for me, I knew I did have days where I did not want to live. I mean, I couldn't understand why. And it's such a heaviness. It's such a burden to feel so bad about something that you don't want to live. It is inexplainable to me, because I don't know why I felt it. I still don't know why. As a clinician, as a Christian, I can't even conceptualize what I was feeling in those times that made me feel like I didn't want to live. And now I can think of themes, right, and can remember it really was about disappointment. And how I always say that parents should teach their children disappointment, because disappointment is really more constant than change. For me, I think that when I was not getting my way, it equated to lovelessness. Not, you just can't have it, or you just can't do it, or that just is not going to be, it's not going to be that way. So I don't know. But for me, when I get calls, when I talk to clients, when I talk to friends, peers, it doesn't matter who it is. When I hear those words, I'm tired. I can't take it anymore. I just want to give up. Or when I see people sleeping in excess, or eating in excess, or withdrawing, or not doing the things that they normally would do, I automatically perk up to listen to the scream of the silent.
So what I hear you saying is there are warning signs that even though we're not trained therapists or clinicians, there are signs that kind of let us know that that person needs some extra attention? Do you think each person right away needs a therapist, or when, as a layperson or as an educator, if I see these signs, what would you recommend? What steps can we take to help that person that is screaming and silent?
I had a thought of someone that I loved that committed suicide, and I can still hear the voice. The voice was always up, yet always down. It was full of life, yet empty. It was so hard, yet so clear to see. And it wasn't until after that I could feel the vibration of the scream. And so I think being attentive as a parent, I talked about last week, doing body checks, watching for self-harm behaviors.
All right, let me see.
Listen, those self-harm behaviors, I think it's essential. I'm the type that be stripped, like this what we doing here. Take your clothes off. Let's go. What we going because I love you. You feel uncomfortable? I feel uncomfortable wondering what's going on with you. So yes. It makes it easier to say no to their children. When I tell people to teach your children disappointment, it's not, I think it's essential that when you say no, you explain that you're not saying no because you can't. You're saying because you can't do that thing or get that thing, or they can't have that thing. You're saying no because you choose to, so that they can understand the value of disappointment and that they can learn how to adjust to it. As parents, when you are constantly giving and giving and giving, knowing that the world is not going to give the way you do, children don't learn to deal with disappointment. And it can yield not just suicide, but homicide. So, oftentimes people
don't rush over that. Let the people hear that one. Say that again. Not just suicide,
but homicide.
Tell us more about that.
So I believe, this is just my theory. I do believe that when you don't know how to accept or adjust to disappointment, then you're more likely to do whatever you need to do to get that thing that you need. So we can start with sex and rape. And so the disappointment, we know now, when we were growing up, if a guy said, hey, whatever, you just, hey, chick, or hey, lady, pss, 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 whatever it is, you just, whatever. You can't really brush them off today.
Yeah.
People are so angry. They are hurting so badly. They are tired of not getting what they want, and they will kill you for the rejection or the lack of responsiveness in what you do.
And I think that's, earlier you and I were talking about the influence of social media, or the influence of this microwave generation, this on-demand generation. When we grew up, you had to wait for your song on Friday nights, fingers on because to record, you had to press record. There were two things you had to press:
play and record, or something. It was two buttons.
And so we would be waiting and waiting, and sometimes you missed the beginning of the song, but you record it because that was the only way you could play it back. Or when the show came on at 8:00 Friday nights, your world revolved around it, because there was no on demand, there was no YouTube. You had to
play it again. You better get it when you get it.
You got it. And I think the skills that we learned growing up that way help prepare us for the wait, for the hard work, for the, oh, I missed it. So now a friend has to describe it to you play by play. Or so this generation of the microwave, this instant, I think that also leads to them not being able to handle disappointment.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. And suicide is the second leading cause of death in African Americans aged 10 through 34. So I'm sure anyone and everyone who is watching this knows someone who is aged 10 to 34. So if you think about one person dies every 40 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's the second leading cause of death in African Americans aged 10 to 34. You can just scan your home right now and look at your watch and realize that this could be happening in your house.
And I think we said that rate is increased.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that leads us to the question of why? Why is this an increase, and why are the numbers for the African American youth higher than their white counterparts?
Okay.
So I feel like the suicide for the Black male is an iceberg. It's the tip of the iceberg. What is underneath that?
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say it's hidden in our community. Suicide is hidden in our community. And I think even some of the articles, some of the research that we looked at, and we know it, right? So we know it from growing up, right? Mm-hmm. But now it's written, it is documented in research that it's perceived in the Black community that suicide is a white thing, right? That's what it said. Suicide is a white thing.
Well, growing up, that's what we heard is, Black people don't commit suicide.
Black people don't do that.
That's not us. That's them. That's them.
That's them. And that's not true.
Not true.
Right? So it doesn't matter what it used to be. We need to know that while this is a hidden, it's hidden in our community, right? We're not seeing it. We're not talking about it. I think we're seeing it a little more. We saw a lot of articles from earlier this year, some stuff. We see the increase from, I think it was 2005 to 2016. It's like all of a sudden it's just growing. And, I said, I know it's not the overarching cause, but I think social media plays an integral part in what we're seeing with the increase in rate of suicide, mainly because when we grew up, we did not have the view of the world. We only could see what was within our community. And likely in our community, everyone had the same thing. So in our community, we all were wearing kind of the same sneakers or living in the same house. We had kind of the same thing because it's a community. Mm-hmm. However, now with social media, you can pick up a device and see the entire world, every brand, every style, every class, everything your mind can imagine. Mm-hmm. And so when someone that looks like you has something that you don't even have the capacity to ever have in or at least have in this season, it makes you weary. It makes you feel inadequate. It makes you feel less than. The poverty, the bullying, all of those things that you get to experience in a Black community based on life. And now you're hurting.
And I think what's an interesting point you make is within your community, it was all like, right? We all eat the same thing. So you really didn't know that you were poor. You didn't know, and so I can see where social media, the internet, I can see where our world has gotten smaller because now we have more access. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I could see definitely some valid points in that. But I also think about the messages that our parents or grandparents gave us around being weak.
Okay.
Weak was not allowed.
Yeah, no. there was no space for weakness. And I think, and I'm gonna let you take this point, because we talked about there was no time for self-care. Right. And we talked about the disparity, right, between men and women. And listen, if you're watching and you have a question or you have a comment, drop it in there and let us know. Let's see if we can address it. If you have some feedback or you want to say something about the suicide rate, how to overcome it, or how it's changed for you in your lifetime. But LaShawn, we talked about how now self-care is all the rage, but what is self-care? What was self-care back then?
I think back to my grandmother, who was born in 1930. I think back to my mom, who was born in 1948, who was a single mom. I think of Nana, raising her family. I think their self-care probably would have been service, helping their community, the work they did in the churches, pedicures and spas and nail day and girlfriend time and to eat. No, a trip to McDonald's was, a hamburger, and we're gonna go home and make the fries. Like you pick one of the entrees, and then you don't get a drink because we got drinks at home.
I'm still like that.
Right. So I think the generations before us, they were so busy working and planning for our futures so that our futures would be better, that they were hustling, 2 and 3 jobs. I mean, I know my mom probably worked 2 jobs, at least 20 years. And Nana, how many years? She retired twice, right?
Twice. And she did it for about 30 or 40 years. So, yeah. So Melissa said the music and lack of complete family structure. Absolutely. I think that is a thing. And Tawanda said prayer meetings at each other's homes. And I absolutely agree with that as well. What I want to say to that point is that we looked at the dynamics of family differently. I try to stress, it's no secret, I was going to therapy at 8. Therapy and mental health was important in my household. We all went to therapy. It was not an option. And so I knew the importance. I'm not sure how well it worked, but I knew the importance, and I at least did it. But I think that now we see this family system that does not look the same as everyone else. And so while I'm encouraging people with 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds to get therapy for their children, when the family system is broken, when the dynamic changes in the Black community, we do know it's kind of like, no, we're good. They're good. They'll be fine, because there's a hidden imagery of, there's that survival, right? That we just that is unconscious for us.
I think as Black Americans, the concept of struggle is not foreign to us. We're expected to have to struggle. We're expected to have to work harder. I mean, I remember explicitly the message was, you have to be smarter, you have to be faster, you have to do more than them. And the them was anyone who didn't have brown skin. The expectation for how I was to show up was not the same as my white counterparts. I mean, explicit instructions. And so I just think because the idea of struggle is what we're expected to do, I think that also leads to the conversation of that disappointment. Well, I'm not supposed to have.
And you said what we're supposed to do. Melissa made a good point. People have self-care confused with self-maintenance. Self-care is not the care of the outside aesthetics of our body. It is the maintenance of one's mental health and soul. Melissa's Melissa's hashtag is I hope this helps. And Melissa, it did, right? So I'm gonna have to add this because it helped.
I did. I love that. And that speaks to the we designed t-shirts and that was one of the t-shirts we were talking about, Melissa, was defining what is self-care. Because I was like, oh, you need to do self-care. You need to do self-care. Did you do any self-care? You did self-care. And a lot of women are asking me, wait a minute, now that we're in a pandemic and I can't get to a manicure, a pedicure, and go have mimosas, what do I do for self-care?
Yeah. Self-care happened before pedicures and mimosas. Right. Selena said it was always Black people do not go to therapy. It was hidden if you did go. And I definitely agree with that. I think just now I was just thinking of the people because I have like these tears that are kind of like bursting up as a waterfall, but I'm trying to whack-a-mole them down so I don't feel this as I feel this. If I was preaching, I'd be like, let me preach it like I feel it, but I don't want to do that. So all of the people who I know that were close to me are African American. The people that I know have attempted are African American or people of color. The people who I know with ideation are people of color. And in my within the past few years, there are a lot of boys and a lot of men. And so I want to make this reference because I talked about it a little bit today with trauma, right? And so kind of off of Selena's point, Lena's like, if we did go, it was hidden or Black people didn't go to therapy. So I have this theory. Can I share my theory, LaShawn, about the little
about Black boys?
Yes. So I want to share my theory about the little Black boy. And I was having a conversation today with people who are not in brown skin, some people who are not in brown skin, and I do get to have this conversation often. But one of the things that I notice, I think there is a weakening of the Black man, and it's not just happening outside the home. I think it starts inside the home. And so what I thought back, and this is just a Sharonda thought, is that in the Black home, in my experience and the experience of people that I've talked to, the little Black boy is nurtured from birth. So he's cozy in the womb, and this isn't a sweeping generalization. So I know there are women who children this doesn't apply to, but it applies to far too many. And so he's cozied in the womb and he comes out and he's coddled, right? And most likely, whether he's in a 2-parent home or a 1-parent home, the parenting and the nurturing comes from women, grandmothers, mothers, aunts, sister, most of the time nurturing is done by women. And so in a Black home, it's that until he can walk, once the baby can walk and or pee by himself or both, he no longer hugged and held and coddled. So you can hug him and hold him, but once he starts walking on his own, the next thing somebody says is, put that boy down. Don't be picking that boy up. We're not raising those. Don't be kissing on that boy. Don't be, and we start to toughen him up at 3 years old, 2.5, 3 years old, because we got to get him ready for the world. And so he gets to school. He now goes from this extremely warm, nurturing season to this almost like drop the baby in the cold, and he's not nurtured, and he now gets to school, and because of his brown skin, he still doesn't get any nurturing. But now he's also being told, don't you show any emotion. You talked about how we were, don't you cry, so you get a whooping, and you cannot cry, and you were silenced, right? And we see this. You're silenced. And then once you're silenced, you get into the workplace and you don't have a voice because of your brown skin, and you're still silenced. But then you get in a relationship and you marry, right? A Black woman, and she wants to hear your voice, but you were never taught how to use it. And so you begin, for Black men, there's a feeling of inadequacy, a feeling of insecurity. They need to be validated, and we're not validating them because we're trying to figure out why they need all that, because we've watched them not get it. And so I'm watching these young boys now who whisper for fear that their voice doesn't matter. And they want to quit when they're not accepted in sports teams, or they want to quit when they don't get the girlfriend that they want, or they want to quit. All I hear people saying is, I give up. And I think it is perpetuated culturally. As much as we're taught to fight, be strong, be better, work harder, there is a weakening of the internal system that doesn't allow the push.
Yeah. I can certainly some of those points. I absolutely agree. And so it almost makes you say that those of us who survive, it is amazing. And it takes some real resiliency. And it does take a level of self-awareness, self-management, self-compassion, and defining for you what self-care looks like versus self-maintenance.
I think the self-awareness is essential. I think that is super hard for us to be able to get the help that we need if we're not aware that there's a problem.
Yeah. And then that leads into, well, where are the fathers? And that to me ties into the school to prison pipeline, the injustices, the arrest rates, the length of the sentencing of a Black man, same crime versus someone who is not Black. And as you know, Melissa's comment, single parent households of young American boys. And so again, it brings us to, what is it like to grow up and live in America as a Black or African American?
I am afraid of how much more the suicide rate will increase, because I just feel that there is a level of hopelessness that our young boys are feeling right now. I had someone tell me that they were afraid to drive. I mean, growing up, the excitement was to get your license. And right now, I'm hearing Black boys tell me that they are afraid to drive. I'm hearing Black boys tell me they don't have a reason to live if the world won't even accept them. So I am hurting at the thought that this number will increase.
Yeah, Mariah has her license, and she started work this week. And so she's 16, she's a teenager, and she's driving herself to work. And one of the conversations that Dre and I had to have with her was what to do if she is pulled over.
I got a tear now.
And so, along with worrying about her being a female driving in a car accident, that's one thing. That's one stress level as a parent. I have to worry about her being pulled over. I'm also, on top of that, I'm worried about her working at a movie theater. I'm concerned about her safety from contracting the coronavirus, COVID-19, whatever we're calling it, big Q. So I'm worried about that. I'm worried about her making it from point A to point B back to me, and having a conversation with her about why it's important for her to check in with us. Because when we grew up, you left the house and you had a time to return. Nobody really knew where you were in the middle. You said you were going to point B. There was a bunch of stops in between. A.1, A.2, A.7. Like there was And so, the first day she went out and, okay, should take her about an hour and a half. So she was gone like 3 hours. Well, I mean, she was back before dark, but I could feel the anxiety in me. And she has a cell phone. We share locations. We have an app on her phone, so there really isn't a reason to be scared, but it's that in between that I can't see.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to get her to understand that it's not that we don't trust her, because we do. We trust her.
Mm-hmm.
The other stuff that I can't see,
Mm-hmm.
that fear, that anxiety of trying to keep my baby safe, knowing that she gonna come back to me the way I let her leave.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that added level of stress on a parent in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
it is real. So I can see where males are saying they're afraid to drive.
Mm-hmm.
She's fortunate. I mean, she knows what's happening, but it hasn't directly impacted her. So
Mm-hmm.
in a way, she's like, Ma, I said I was going here, and so I stopped at McDonald's, because we're like, where did you go? Why did it take you so long?
Mm-hmm.
And trying to help her to understand is not that we don't trust you with these rules and requirements, and asking you to check in. When you leave from that place, send us a text. I'm here. I'm walking in the building.
Mm-hmm.
At 49, I check on my mom every day. I know you do the same with mom, and so this time in America is definitely social unrest.
Mm-hmm. I think that I never imagined that you would have to be more concerned about your child being killed by the police than being in a car accident. Melissa said, while living in Colorado, I was pulled over by the police while my son was in the car with me. He had a panic attack, and the cop had to call for an ambulance. The cop apologized, but my son was terrified before the cop even got to the window. And so these are the things that are changing our young Black boys. These are the things that are changing the landscape of America. These are the things that are changing how we view ourselves, how we view our mental health, how we look toward our future. These are the things that matter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saddened that happened, but I will tell you too that he probably should get some EMDR therapy. I do believe that he needs to get some therapy, whether it's one session, 2 or 3, or whatever it is, whatever he needs, because that is a point of trauma. And so for most people, if he hasn't already gotten some, for most people, the thought would be like, oh, he'll be all right. We talked about it.
Yeah.
But what happens is this is now here.
Mm-hmm.
And so the trigger, you just don't know what that trigger will be. For me, I think of us, how we always traveled at night. Most, we're known for road trips, state to state. And so we did always travel at night. I don't even feel comfortable. And I know Dre loves driving in the middle of the night I don't even feel comfortable anymore with that. So I think while I know we shifted some to the culture, I think the culture is playing a huge role on the mental health in America and in the African American community. We are there is a brokenness in our community that is positioning us to see these statistics increase.
Yes. And the other interesting thing is, a lot of people would like to think it's by accident, or it's just a coincidence, or it's just a plight that we have been given. This was a systematic plan.
Mm-hmm.
If you look back, this was a plan. They used the Bible story to condone slavery, to say that we were designed to be slaves. Our story, our history doesn't start from the point of slavery. That's not our history.
That's
No,
not our story.
that is not our story.
Mm-hmm.
We were not born slaves.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to understand that this system here in America, it is designed to oppress. It is to oppress. And I know we kind of moved away from the suicide, but I believe it all directly ties back into it. Because when you are growing up like that, when you feel that hopelessness, what is your reason to live?
What is your reason to live? And I think when I think of the people who I know who have committed suicide and those who attempted suicide, they were oppressed, right? They felt no reason to live, be it physical, mental, emotional, financial. They were in abusive relationships. They felt empty. They felt alone, right? I believe that we have the propensity to feel all these things right now.
Absolutely. It makes me think of something you and I talked about this afternoon. All these emotions have a place at the table where you're saying. Yeah. We can't erase our feelings, but we do need to learn how to manage them.
Yeah, what I said, if my paper was close, I would get it. I think it warranted. Maybe I'll post it. But I feel like my emotions fight at the boardroom table to have a place there. Right. And so while some of the emotions, they all are powerful in their own right. But I see my emotions at a boardroom table vying for attention. And so my fear is there. My hopelessness is there. My faith is there. My joy is there. My grief is there. All of it sits at the table vying for my attention. It's like any board meeting. It is there to speak, to give its report. And in what's critical about that is, what voice will I hear? At that boardroom table, what voice am I listening to? Is the fear speaking louder than my faith? Is my sorrow stronger than my strength? Am I really, really going to be overwhelmed, or will I overcome the emotion first? I think it is essential to be respectful of your feelings. I think as parents, as listeners, as friends, as sisters, as helpers, as people, we have got to be in tune to one another.
And even before we can be in tune with one another, we have to be in tune with ourselves. So that was one of the gifts that I really leaned in on with when I was being coached to train to coach, is we ask people how they feel. How you feeling today? And what do most people say? Fine, I'm good. Fine and good are not feelings. Fine and good are not feelings. And so it is not often, and this is what therapy and coaching will give you, time to process that internal voice and acknowledge those feelings that are at that boardroom table, right? And then you start to learn and notice which one of those voices will serve me well in each situation. Because at the hot stove, as you shared with me, is the feeling of fear a valid one? Yes. But if I'm ready to make a speech, to share my story, to speak truth, fear does not serve me in that instance. So I have to start to learn and notice which one of these emotions, who should have the main seat, I guess, at this boardroom table, to go with that analogy. But as we wrap up, I do have my niece who's just come over to visit, and she just came in and sat next to me. And as we I'll let you wrap up, but she does want to share a little bit about what it's like for a college student in this remote learning environment.
Oh, I would love to hear from our precious niece.
Oh, let me see if I can share my. Okay. All right. Hey, Cherie.
Hello.
Hi, Ree.
Hi. I'm here
Thank-
to talk about today the points of college and school.
Good. Tell us what your experience is, Ree.
My experience is good. I had a good first week.
Mm-hmm.
We talked really about self-awareness, and we talked about 9/11 today, which is very important because I was a baby when it happened.
Mm.
We talked about all of it and how we can, like, how it served our purpose and how it was attacked in New York,
Mm-hmm.
and how they honored this day
Mm-hmm.
just because of what happened. And
How did it feel being back in a learning environment?
it feels great. I miss my friends, miss my teachers. I miss learning and getting to try to do the new things.
Cool. Because we know you've been working. You worked this summer with Christian.
Yes.
so so you get a break being back to school.
Yes. Also work. But
Yes, you do a very, very, very good job. We appreciate it. Lord knows.
brother's so dealing.
Well, it's also good training because your career, what is it that you want to do? What are you going to college for right now?
To be a preschool teacher.
Oh, so listen, they got a lot of practice for you around there, but I already know you're doing naps and reading and all those things. So we already said you're going to be dynamic at that.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm learning how to change diapers.
Oh, good. You don't have to learn that. Let them do that. I'm going to keep acting like I don't know, Ree. When I get there, I just be like, I forgot. So.
I don't really change diapers, but I do it just because it's a part of the criteria in preschool. Because, little kids, they don't know how to use the potty. And it's life. And I'm ready.
Yes.
You're ready to try new things. Now, speaking of new things, you have something special coming up on the 1st?
Yes. My first birthday is coming up.
Your what birthday?
21st birthday.
Yes.
Party in the house, birthday girl in the house.
We're so excited.
Well, we have exceeded our time. We are getting close to the 1 hour mark. So we just want to thank you for sharing your perspective.
We do. Thanks for joining us, Ree.
Have a great day.
All right. So as we wrap it up, Sean.
Auntie Beta said hi, Ree.
Hi, Auntie Beta.
And so did Auntie Sonia and Eloise and Mommy, Lena and Melissa. So yes, Ree, thanks for sharing. Sean, I want to just touch on what the National Suicide Prevention Month. Yes, Eloisa said her birthday twin. Cherie is her birthday twin. Asia's there too. She said hi, Repeat. So the National Suicide Prevention Month, their hashtag is be the one to. Right. And so and I'm going to post those pictures because I think that that's essential. So it is be the one to ask. Right. And the one thing that I thought of when I read that was we're having conversations. You notice someone is down, the countenance is down. You notice that they've changed. Stop for a minute and just say, when they say that, just like you said, or, I'm okay. I'm okay really isn't a feeling or an answer. It's a response, but I'm not sure that that's an answer. So according to their website, they're saying be the one to ask. And when you ask, be intentional, right, about listening to what the person says, because remember that these are silent screams. Yet to me, they vibrate. The next thing they say is be the one to be there, or to be there. What does that mean for you?
In this time of physical distance, I think it's a little more challenging to be there for our friends. So I think we have to be intentional and deliberate. I think you have to go out of your way now to send an extra text message or actually pick up the phone and call someone, interact with people on their social media post. I think that is helpful. Instead of clicking a like button, actually take time to write a comment out, like so many people are doing this evening as we're having this conversation. People could just sit back and, just listen to us, but people are actually engaging, they're offering their input and sharing their experiences. So I think we have to do more of that. That's what the be there is. I think for us as a family, being physically distanced, I haven't seen my mom since January. And so that means when I call her, not just to say like, oh, hey, quick, how you doing? But to actually listen to what she's saying so that I could pick up on any slight symptoms or signs that there could be something else there. So I think those things, that intentionality, that mindfulness, those are the things that be there means. That's what it means for me. What does it mean for you?
I think the same thing is present. I think I got a little tear. Let me catch it. Because I can think of the people who have been there for me. One of the things is when my first day, anyone who knows me, whether you know me then or you know me now, unless you know me in that counseling space for 50 minutes, you know me to be, as Kyrie calls it, an original wailer. I cry all the time. And so my first day as a therapist, I didn't cry. And I remember getting in the car screaming, I was built for this. Because I didn't know that I could not cry. But what I learned shortly after is that people can tell me anything. I couldn't figure out what would hurt me, what triggered me in therapy. I felt like something must have happened to me because I cry watching fake stuff on TV.
Oh, yes. Me too. I am.
Yes, so I'm crying. I'm just crying all the time. And so I would hear stories. You can tell me you've been raped, beat. You can tell me you're a murderer. You can tell me you watched 10 people be murdered. You can tell me the most disturbing story ever. And I won't shed a tear. But if you tell me any of those things and add to it, no one was there for me. I don't have anyone to talk to. When I ask you who's your support system and you say no one, that is what does it for me. And so what does it mean to be there? It means be there because I know how many people rescued me. I can recall, and I mean, my last thought of attempt was 14 or 15 years ago. And I remember everyone who got that message from me texted, was like calling the police. I can remember it so clearly. And then I thought about like the sovereignty of God. If it was his will for me to die, I would have. But he chose to let me live. And people were there for me. Not just hey, but hey, what are you doing? Hey, are you good? Just people listening. I'm plugged. I have to say this because the podcast that I did last week was on infertility and suicide. And while for me, I don't think that I was to the brink of suicide, but I certainly could have been based on what infertility did to my mental health. And suicide is a mental health issue. So I could have been. The other thing they say is to keep them safe. And I think I alluded to that with people staying on the phone with me, right? So my threat was a little crazy, but I mean, it's just me.
Yeah, don't leave them alone to go get help. Do not leave them alone.
Yeah. So it's not, I'll be all right. I'm good. No, I mean, folk had me held to the fire. But I appreciate it and I love them more. And so when people call me and they say I'm having a hard time or I don't want, listen, you better be joking if you tell me you tired, because I don't ever think that means sleepy. I think that means you on your way somewhere to make a decision that that I can help you with. So I don't take that lightly. So that is what keep them safe means for me. For you, what is it?
It means the same thing, but I also think that we have to, especially with our friends and our own children, to let them know that we will not judge them, that we will, if someone does come to you and say, man, I don't think I can make it, or I'm going through a lot, don't say, oh, what crazy people kill themselves. I think we have to be really careful with our judgment statements, because when the person is in crisis, they're not going to come to you.
They're not.
Hide it. They're going to scream in silence. So I think it also is worth saying, be careful with the statements we make about, let's just say that you do know someone who committed suicide. As you're telling your friend that story, leave the judgment out, because that's what they're going to hear. Oh, I'm feeling that way, but I already know how you feel about it, because you called that person whatever negative statement you made about it. So they're not going to come to you when they feel that way, because they know how you feel about it. So I think it's important for us to not judge.
I thank you. And I can say I can say gratefully that I never felt judged, right? Words do matter, Melissa. And what I will say is that we do have to remember the power of life and death is in the tongue. When you mention that in judgment, that's scriptures, right? But I often call the tongue the murderer. Like, Lord, you done murdered someone today, right? Being mindful that you are accountable for every word that comes out of your mouth, and you don't want your words to be the weapon that kills someone else.
And it's hard because we are flesh first. So I'm not sitting here on this side of the camera saying I always get it right. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is that I think we have to start to be more mindful once we understand the impact of our words.
Melissa, I don't know what the pink tornado is. Do you, LaShawn?
No, but we have to ask Google.
The last one, Selena, yes, words can kill. The last thing that they say is help them connect. And so I'll go back and post the suicide prevention number, I can't even say it, the suicide prevention hotline number. I'll go back and post that, and it'll be on my page. But I encourage anyone, reach out. I know, if I can be of any assistance, I can direct you or, get you to the right place when this is happening. So mommy says the tongue, Melissa said the tongue too. Oh, the pink tornado. Oh,
yeah, words hurt. Words hurt. Yeah.
That's so late.
I get it. Yeah.
Help them connect. Before we go, I do want to address this because Melissa just said, she said, I know we have to go. But can we touch on what to do when family fights against therapy? Girl, fight the family. No, I'm just joking. I will say this. And so Melissa also, her comment was, my best friend committed suicide because her family didn't believe in therapy. As a result, she would not seek help and saw no way out. She was 31 years old. Melissa, sorry to hear that.
Definitely prayerful. Yes, definitely sorry to hear that.
So the good thing is that therapy is being normalized on these here reality shows. Right. That's the good thing, Melissa. I get excited when I look at now all of these new shows that are incorporating therapy. But I will tell you what, this is when you remember that you are your best advocate. I think that it is essential to shape it in a manner that releases them from the stigma, if that makes sense. I think there is a lead into it, right? You can start with conversations. You can share your experience with therapy. When I talk to people and they're like, I never thought therapy would work, therapy changed my life, I'm always saying, share that, because we have to be instrumental in getting the word out that therapy changes lives, that it heals.
Yes. And I think, as you touched on, now more celebrities are coming forward, starting their own foundation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is helpful. So it's kind of normalizing it. I also think that we have to think that therapy is not just talk therapy. We have art therapists, music therapists, we have coaches. There are a lot of different ways that you can present it to a family or family member that may be leery. The other thing is finding a therapist that looks like you, if that will make the family more comfortable. Mm-hmm. So offering options. Coaching is an option as well, as long as there's not a mental illness attached to it. And I think presenting options is definitely a way to kind of crack open that door. And even offering something like, well, how about trying it for 4 sessions? Or what would you say would be a minimum number, to try to get someone to persuade them to try it?
I would say 1 session, but I also would say offer to go with them, right? Go to therapy with them. Offer to arrange, because listen, we are in a season where my show says I'm God's leading therapist, right? Called, chosen, and set apart. I also know that I'm not a traditional therapist. And I think that it is important for us to be, for me, I had someone who wanted therapy and didn't want to come alone, so someone came with them, right? And as long as you sign a disclosure, then that's fine. Therapists talk about it all the time. This person came to therapy. I brought her to therapy with me. You see it on TV. We see it as clinicians. Everyone, you can look and you'll see a lot of clinicians talking about it. Just being mindful that it's okay, right? And once you can get comfortable, I tell people, just come once.
Now, let me add this. If you start with one therapist and that's not working for you, don't give up. Don't quit. It's just, you went to McDonald's once and your order was wrong. Did you stop going to all McDonald's?
Right.
So finding your flavor of therapist is important too, and knowing that you have that freedom and flexibility. And this is an intimate relationship that you're entering into with your therapist, your coach, your counselor. So it has to be a good fit. If you're not comfortable with that person, it's not going to work for you. Mm-hmm. I had therapists, my daughters had therapists, and the connection wasn't there. Mm-hmm. You have the freedom to find what works for you, who fits for you. And that could change from season to season too, So mm-hmm. I would encourage people to be flexible mm-hmm. and to go into this because it's a relationship. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So ask questions, mm-hmm. ask their credentials, ask, how are you going to handle me when the conversation gets difficult? And so I think that's important too.
Mm-hmm. I think too, you're welcome, Melissa. I think too is that the willingness to connect, because it's about connection. And so what way, because they may not go to a therapist. We know culturally some people won't go to a therapist, and it's not just African Americans. There are guides, there are books, there are so many things to help people who do not want to go to therapy. Right. And so I think that it is essential to meet people where they are, mm-hmm. to listen to their why. Why don't they want to go to therapy? What is the opposition? And you don't have to defend therapy, because therapy will speak for itself. For me, one of the reasons I became a therapist is because I did not have good experiences with therapists. And so I wanted people to I wanted to help people in the manner that I know they needed it. And so I only can pray that I am offering my clients service that has changed their lives, therapy that has changed their lives. But I'm going to go back on that, Melissa, and say, see if you can get, or anyone who is facing that, family is against it, try and understand the why behind the opposition and speak to that. Try not to be defensive. Try to be welcoming. Hear their side. And if there are myths to be dispelled, if there are bad experiences, then you have the opportunity to speak to that and to encourage them in a different way. And I think that in that you'll find that people will find some acceptance. That's the word, some acceptance. So
yeah, I agree. And the other thing, and I'll ask you this as a parent, if you think your child needs a therapist, but your child doesn't want to go, or your child thinks they don't need it, what advice would you give us or give a parent? Do you think we should force them to go? I mean, where do you, as a professional, where do you stand on that?
If your child needs to go to school, but your child doesn't want to go to school, would you force them to go? I'm sorry, my bad. There's one person who I'd love to hear the answer to this. I would love to hear. I would love to hear Krista's answer to this. I'm gonna have to ask her because she's not on Facebook, but I am gonna ask her, and I'm sure we've talked about it. Therapy is, listen, in anything, it's like addiction. When you're ready to get help, you're not always willing. A lot of times, especially working with teens, they're apprehensive. They don't want to go. Listen, this is why therapy ought to be mandated, because then we won't have to have these kind of conversations, right? If we mandated therapy the way we mandate an eye exam and a shot this and a that, then everybody would know that they're going. So I would encourage you parents to just get your kids going when they're young. Let it be a part of their health routine. If you normalize it from jump, they will be used to it and they won't have to get accustomed, because it's like going to the doctor. When they know they have to get a shot, they cry. Go on and cry in there with that therapist. I'm going to get something out of it.
I will say one of the new trends they knew probably the last 10 years is there's a lot of curriculum around social emotional learning. So the conversation is happening in schools. For example, in the virtual setting, we do a check-in, we do a 2-word check-in, we use emojis. And so we are talking to students about their emotion and their overall well-being. One of the trainings that I did this summer was about how to bring that social emotional learning component into a high school. And that's kind of why I became a coach, is I want to work with the teens, not realizing, it also rolls over into the teachers as well. But normalizing the conversation around managing your emotions, and there is a direct tie into your social behavior. Your emotions, all of that, is linked together. And I know I'm preaching to the choir on that.
My emotions drive my social behavior. How many times y'all been around me and been like, "Oh, she funky," based on whatever?
Yeah. So I would encourage parents to. I know the question was about getting your child to therapy, but I also think as our child's first teacher, that can also be a part of it. And I remember, when Mariah was younger, when she would get upset, I would say, use your words, learn to communicate, express to me what you're feeling. You're not happy with the decision mommy made. Let's talk about it. And so giving our children, our students, the language to express themselves And
the
so
freedom.
the freedom, but that language and freedom. But if
Mhm.
we start in the home with, one, talking about therapy is normal. Oh,
Mhm.
you're not feeling well emotionally, you're sad. There's a doctor for that. There's a specialist that
Mhm.
helps you with that. Your child's teeth get crooked, you take them to the orthodontist. And so I think you're right with the connection too. If my child didn't want to go to school, would I still make her go to school? Yes. So yes. So but yes, curious as a professional, because I've heard of parents dragging their kids to therapy and then the child just sits there. They don't talk.
Right. But let me tell you my experience was that with that goes right back to what you said. Switch your therapist, right? Because listen, we can sit here. This is what we're gonna do. We can sit here. At some point, fortunately for me, this is my call and this is not my career. So I have not had that challenge because God preordained me to be able to sit in the seat that I sit in to work with the people that I with. So when I have had that experience, we ride it out and the folk they're talking. So do your research on the therapist. Check the therapist out. But I will say this too, Sean, you are the first line of defense. And so start teaching feelings. That is so important. And where do you feel that in your body? When your children are like, oh, this hurts or this hurts or this hurts, your body is holding stuff. So, well, where do you feel that? Okay, well, if is it sadness? Is it here? Is it moving? Really having those conversations. I think for us, one of the things is that again, it goes back to that not being able to feel, not being fostered, that those feelings not being fostered. And so you get to say, what is happening here? Okay, when Chloe was here, like, okay, tell me what you're feeling. Where do you feel that in your body? And everybody needs the butterfly. Everybody needs the butterfly. So that's for another day. But you can start doing that with your children so that, again, normalize it through childhood. They will have it as a regular routine and it will be a part of life. And so I do believe in all joking aside, yes, you need to force them to go, right? Because their life is at stake. That's the reality. Their life is at stake.
Yeah, and I definitely think, mental health definitely is tied into suicide prevention. And I think one of the easiest things, I know, you and I talk about the butterfly, and I think connecting to the breath. That's another
Mm-hmm.
two easy things that if we can teach our students and teach ourselves, when that anxiety rears up, you need to stop and you need to breathe, and you need to be breathing so that your belly is full.
Yeah. Let me to the breathing. I'm gonna tell y'all something that my good friend Dr. Krista Phipps taught me. I could call her Krista though. Winter is coming, fall is coming. For all of you parents out there, get yourself some hot chocolate. This is how you teach your children how to breathe.
Okay.
And how to, right? So you get your hot chocolate. What happens when you get hot chocolate? What do you do first? Yes, there you go. And so they get to, and while they're getting their hot chocolate to breathe, they are learning how to breathe. And so I watched, like, one day I was like, what is the hot chocolate for? She's like, oh, this is a breathing technique. So they get to get their hot chocolate. They get to,
yeah.
put
your hand on your belly while you breathe, you should feel it
expanding.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, listen, we have to do some, different things. We have to be creative. You have to invest in some different things. And for God's sake, read Whole Brain Child.
Yeah.
For your children, read Whole Brain Child. As an adult, read The Body Keeps the Score. Both of those are books that I highly recommend. But in all seriousness,
all seriousness,
my words. In all seriousness, listen. That is going to be the most essential thing you can do. Listen to the voice. Listen to the screams of the silent. And listen to your heart. You know when things are not right. check your children, sit down at home. There's a game called the Ungame. And I can put it, they knew it was coming over. The Ungame. It's just some cards, and you can have a conversation with your kids, pull them out and just go through the cards, hear what your kids have to say. It's very simple. You can, or make them up, but it's an opportunity to have conversation and hear what your children have to say. Right now in this season, kids are screaming. LaShawn, I got to say this before we go. I wish you could show what your virtual learning room looked like your classroom.
Tell me more. I'm sorry.
No faces.
Oh, the circles. Oh,
the circles.
Yeah.
There I go with a tear of the circles.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things, the students don't turn on their cameras, and there's a laundry list of reasons why they don't. And so as an educator, I thrive off that energy. I thrive off of the energy, the vibration that my students, that they give me off their faces. That's how I know if they're getting the content. I have spent 21 years studying bodies, body movement, body language. A student doesn't need to raise their hand and tell me they don't get it. We can look at their face, you look at their eyes, when there's an aha. And in this distant season, this distant learning, we're talking to a circle because their cameras are not on. And so it makes our jobs a little more challenging. And so it does require some muscle to teach in this virtual setting, but it just is what it is. Radical acceptance is what I call it. And we're just doing the best we can. And we need more parents that are, just checking in on their kids, because the teachers can't do it right now. We're distant. So it is, along with being your child's educational instructor, you're also in charge of their mental well-being now too. The guidance counselors are remote. The therapists are remote. You're doing teletherapy. And so, I know we got to wrap up. So I guess this will be our closing. What are you noticing with the screen therapy? What, how is that impacting?
For me or them?
I don't know.
Okay, should I answer this before I talk about next week's topic, or should we talk about next week's topic and then close out?
Yes.
Which one?
Let's do next week's topic, and then we'll do our final thoughts, because we are way over. So thank you for those who stayed on. Thank you so much. And we definitely did not mean to not value your time, but I'm blaming it on Melissa.
Yes, Melissa. And I'm just going to ask Melissa right now, when she's free, if she can teach me how to use StreamYard so that the little banner is not across my face, because Melissa is the one who got me using StreamYard. I just didn't tell her I needed a tutorial. Sonia said her kid has to keep the camera on. And Veda said her middle schooler turns on the camera. So listen, I have a burning topic I want to talk about. Love you too, Lena. I have a burning topic I want to talk about, and it is mental health in marriage and relationships. So whether you are single or entangled,
we need a panel for that one. I watched this show, Huntsville, and she had a panel of people, right? So we need to open it up.
Yes.
We need a panel. If we could get 3 people to share, that would be, that might be fire.
So yes, that might be fire. So this is a part of this is drawn from Love and Marriage Huntsville, and which they have a therapist. I said it. It really is more shows. So, we can talk about, it really is. So what I asked, what LaShawn and I have been doing along with our husbands are watching shows that pertain to relationships that have counselors or something. And so we've been doing this for about 4 months now, and we discuss it. And so LaShawn and I went in on this, but the mental health component of relationships. So I'm telling y'all that listen, if you want to be a part of the panel, let us know, because I do believe that it's going to go on more than 1 week, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, it is. So, but I want, whether you're single or married or whatever the season you are in your life, and this may relate, the mental health component that is that happens in relationships, right? So for me, I do a lot of couples work. I don't know, people love it and I love it. And so I say that there are no problems in a marriage, that there are problems with individuals and they show up in the marriage. So there, to me, Sharonda, this is just me. I don't believe that there are marriage problems. I believe that people have problems and they show up in the marriage. And so we are talking about relationships, how to prepare your mental health for relationships, and what not tending to your mental health can do to your relationship and or your marriage. So if you feel drawn or led or have a question that you want us to answer on this series, let us know if you want to be a part of the series. You don't have to stay for the whole time. We can,
Now we do know how to bring people in and out.
Yeah, we can bring you in and out. Thank you, Melissa. You told me that too. We can bring people in and out, but I think that this is going to be an exciting series. I almost didn't want to do suicide today because it was burning, but I'm glad we did because we had a lot of questions about suicide and it's important and it's dear to my heart. So the next couple of weeks, unless God says differently, Sister Chat, the counselor and the coach, we're going to be talking about mental health and relationships and marriage. Mm-hmm. Okay, so tell someone you know, share it, like it. One day we'll be able to say subscribe. And if you have questions, I'm going to put a post out there probably tomorrow and just start putting your questions or comments, and we're going uncut, unedited, mental health, marriage, and relationships. And we will be referencing some of these celebrities because we do believe that that reality shows are having an effect on marriage and relationships. Okay, so LaShawn, what was your question? I have to get that out.
We're wrapping up. I tell you what, I think we kind of really took a deep dive into suicide and prevention and some of our thoughts on that. And Cherie reminded me that it is September 11th, and I'm reminded of where I was on that day. And I was at Chadwick Elementary School, and I just remember being in disbelief, and I remember really feeling vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And I think, the next days, watching the community and watching people pull together was a time of hope. And so I think that's something we can lean into in this season with so much despair, so much uncertainty. I think you raised a good point about Christ and God having a purpose and a plan for our life. And one of the things that I know about us as a people, we don't all live to our purpose and passion. And again, that fear and suicide that's what's at risk. Mm-hmm. When we commit suicide, we are not honoring those of us who are God girls. Mm-hmm. We are not honoring our purpose that God has called us for. Mm-hmm. And so that is my takeaway, is remembering to honor my purpose and my passion to serve the Lord.
Mm. Yes. Cue the praise music right here. 9/11, and I did a training today and we talked about it, and I remembered it quite vividly, being on the working on the floor at MBNA at my desk and getting calls from mommy because she could see it from the window at work, and getting texts from my friends and hearing the screams of people who were there, who had people there, and just, being from Jersey City, 5 minutes from Manhattan by PATH train. It was devastating to know, even, we had Jersey City hometown heroes that was lost, people who went to fight, in Ground Zero to help and to work. there. It was a devastation, but it also was a time that we saw the country come together. It is a time that we will never forget. And so my prayer is that as a country, we can come together again. I hate that it has to be over tragedy, right? I wish that it could be out of love. My takeaway is, listen, when I think about how worthless I thought I was, when I reflect on the years that I felt inadequate and not good enough, when I consider the times that I didn't feel like life was worth living, when I think of thoughts of how to take my life, and then I reflect on the sovereignty of God and how much the Lord Jesus Christ loves me, that he let me live through my pain, through my insecurities, through my doubt, through my depression, through my grief, through my hopelessness, through my despair, through my shame, everything that he kept me from was for my purpose, his plan, and his promise for my life. So don't abort your purpose by suicide. Realize that in the sovereignty of God, there is a purpose, a promise, and a plan for your life. And I can say that while I do remember, I'm so grateful to know that I have value, that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made.
Yes.
And that God has a plan for my life and that he loves me with an everlasting love. And my feelings were not based on any lack or anything that I was not getting, but they were reflective of the emotional war that was raging within me. But someone was listening, and God kept me.
And for anyone listening that needs to hear that you matter, we see you, we appreciate you. And even Nevada and I go, I don't even know how many years back, but her oldest daughter, Tiana, was one of my students. And she was remembering that we were together during 9/11. She was in my class. She was a 5th grade student. And so it does bring me great joy to know that my students remember me, during a time like that. And so everyone, there's a plan and a purpose for you.
And just think now, the way you composed yourself in that room is a part of Tiana's legacy. It's what she will remember.
Yeah. Well, that's what I have been saying this whole experience is, the way we are showing up now. This is the chapter. This is the book that, we're writing. And how do you want to show up? How you act now is how you will be remembered later. And so you get to choose. You get to decide. If you are running around your house stressed out and frantic, that is the story that your children will tell about you during this crisis. So we have to be very mindful of that. And that anxiety, our children will feed off of that. So, but anyway, we have kept the good people long past time tonight.
Long past our 30-minute sister chat. Wow. Tiana's turning 29, you old.
Let me say, not only is Tiana turning 29, Tiana has children. Veda has grandchildren.
Why you gonna put that on Veda? You're the educator of a child who has children.
If I've been teaching 21 years and my first group of students were 10, somebody do the math. I'm a reading teacher.
Sonia, go study. Listen, guys, we love y'all. We don't count it robbery that you took this time with us. Let us know if there's something you want to talk about or something that you want to join in or hear us talk about for Sister Chat. Thank you, Veda.
Veda. We're holding you and your family in prayer.
Yes.
Yeah. So, definitely.
Yes. So so Veda, we're praying for you guys. But thank y'all. Love y'all. And we can't wait to do it again. Especially since we talk about mental health and marriage and relationships. I'm so excited.
I feel like, do you have the music ready? Can we play out? Because that song is it's just sticking in my head.
We can make it.
We can make it.
All right. We got a request. Y'all, listen, go and download my good friend TAMBA Giles' new song. We can make it. It is on everywhere that you can stream music. So we're getting ready to go on out on We Can Make It.
And don't forget, if you want to join us next week on Sister Chat, DM live in the DMs.
Yes, let us know. We can make it.
You gotta turn that up a little bit.
Okay, I'm turning it up.
Come on, Baltimore, we can make it. So that we can make it, Houston, you can make it.
Joy. Oh, your peace, Lily. Oh, such a good place for it.
Mm-hmm.
We can make it. You're more than a conqueror. He said you will win. Yes. Good night, guys.
Good night, family.